谢谢主席。
Thank you, President. I thank Deputy Special Coordinator Alak Barov for his briefing. The Palestinian question lies at the core of the Middle East issue and bears on peace and security in the region and beyond. We welcome the agreement reached on the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire. However, peace between Palestine and Israel is still far from being achieved, and the suffering of civilians continues. We call on the international community to work harder with the greatest sense of urgency and unwavering political will toward restoring peace in the region. First, achieving a lasting ceasefire in Gaza is a priority. We note with concern that violent clashes persist despite the ceasefire. Israel has reportedly committed over 400 violations of the agreement, resulting in more than 300 civilian deaths in Gaza. A ceasefire means the complete cessation of all attacks and should be observed by all parties in good faith. Any incident that causing civilian casualties is unacceptable, and repeated attacks must not become the new normal in Gaza. China urges all relevant parties, Israel in particular, to fully honor the ceasefire agreement and work toward a truly comprehensive and lasting peace. Second, scaling up humanitarian assistance for Gaza is a top priority. The humanitarian situation remains dire, with severe shortages of essential supplies and medical equipment. Humanitarian access to Gaza continues to face multiple obstacles, and the aid that does reach Gaza falls short of the quantity specified in the ceasefire agreement. The International Court of Justice had issued multiple advisory opinions and orders of provisional measures, stating unequivocally that as the occupying power, Israel is under obligation to ensure the provision of humanitarian assistance to Gaza. China urges Israel to fully comply with its obligations under international humanitarian law, open all crossing points, lift restrictions on humanitarian access, and ensure that UNRWA and other humanitarian agencies can carry out their relief operations. Third, easing tensions in the West Bank is a pressing demand. The occupying powers' continued settlement expansion and connivance at settler violence have further fueled the tensions in the West Bank. As documented by the UN, there were more than 260 incidents of settler violence last month alone, resulting in significant civilian casualties and extensive property damage, making it the most devastating month since 2006. Settlement activities violate international law and Security Council resolutions, erode the foundation for an independent Palestinian state, and impinge on the living space of the Palestinian people. Israel should cease all settlement activities, curb settler violence, and stop undermining the foundation of governance by the Palestinian Authority. Fourth, implementing the two-state solution represents the only solution. Both Gaza and the West Bank are the inseparable parts of the Palestinian state. Last week, the Security Council adopted Resolution 2803. Relevant countries should act responsibly toward the people of Gaza, the Security Council, and the international community by promptly reporting relevant developments to the Council so that the Council remains seized of and meaningfully engaged in the matter. Any future arrangements on Gaza should be guided by the principle of Palestinians govern Palestine and respect the will of the Palestinian people. The international community must redouble efforts to advance the two-state solution, oppose any unilateral actions that undermine its foundation, and support the early realization of independent Palestinian statehood and full UN membership. President, China has consistently and firmly supported the just cause of the Palestinian people in restoring their legitimate national rights. China will continue to work toward a lasting ceasefire, improved humanitarian situation, and at an earlier date, a comprehensive, just and lasting solution to the Palestinian question based on relevant UN resolutions and a two-state solution. I thank you, President.
Mr. President,
We are grateful to Deputy UN Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Ramiz Alakbarov, for his briefing on the situation in the Middle East, including the Palestinian question. It has been more than a month since the agreement between Israel and Hamas on the cessation of hostilities were reached, and in this short time, much more has been achieved than in the 2 long years of war. All surviving hostages have been released. Thousands of Palestinians held in custody have been freed, and conditions have emerged for improving the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. At the same time, it must be noted that with the conclusion of these agreements, it's still too early to speak of long-awaited peace. Both sides accuse each other of regular violations. Since October 10th, as a result of IDF strikes, more than 300 Palestinians have been killed. And just in the last 24 hours, as a result of shelling, 33 people were killed in Khan Yunis and Gaza City. The reasons for this unjustifiable brutality was retaliation for an alleged Hamas attack against Israeli positions on Khan Yunis, although the Hamas movement denies involvement in this. The bodies of 3 hostages have not yet been returned. There are still significant restrictions which remain on the delivery and distribution of humanitarian aid in the Strip. A distinctive feature of recent days in Gaza has been the yellow line dividing the Strip into territories controlled by Hamas and the IDF. The construction of barriers and fortifications on the Israeli-controlled side indicates that the occupation of the Strip is a long-term nature, and this poses daily risks for Gazans who find themselves on opposite sides of the barricades, similar to what was the situation for the residents of divided Berlin. Moreover, many sections of the yellow line are unmarked, and there are frequent instances, when Palestinians come under fire crossing the line without realizing that. We are also alarmed by reports of arbitrary changes by Israel to the yellow line in some areas of Gaza in violation of the ceasefire agreement. Mr. President, the instability on the ground, where it would be more appropriate to speak of a situation of neither war nor peace, is compounded by uncertainty regarding further steps to implement the peace agreement. When will the Palestinian Authority return to power in Gaza? When will Israel withdraw its troops from the Strip? How will Hamas be disarmed? All of these questions are directly interconnected, and the lack of details in President Trump's plan was something that allowed the parties to reach an agreement. Well, at this stage, without a candid and concrete answers, peace efforts may get bogged down in endless mutual accusations of violations of the agreement's conditions. Unfortunately, the UN Security Council Resolution 2803, adopted a week ago, did not provide clarity on this. It sets out rather broad frameworks for the future Board of Peace, which is tasked with overseeing Gaza reconstruction, as well as the force mandate for the international stabilization forces, which are to be deployed in coordination with Israel and Egypt. We are convinced that the effective functioning of these bodies depends on how closely they will interact with the Palestinian side. It's also important to define as soon as possible the timelines for transferring authority in the enclave to the Palestinian authorities and for the withdrawing of IDF units from the Strip. At the same time, we have not yet heard of any potential troop contributing country willing to participate in the force's operations. Colleagues, what would motivate militants to lay down their arms if there is no certainty that Gaza's future will be in the hands of Palestinians themselves rather than occupying forces or some international body? In addition, reports of Israel sponsoring certain Palestinian groups to fight Hamas are troubling. Such actions can have very dangerous consequences. History knows many such examples. These doubts are further fueled by provocative rhetoric from Israeli high officials. For example, statements made by Israel's Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, when he says there is no such thing as a Palestinian people, and his incitement to kill senior Palestinian Authority officials do not, and I'm putting it mildly, do not contribute to establishing a sustainable peace process. It is noteworthy that even the cautious and vague wording on Palestinian self-determination in Security Council Resolution 2803 provoked a storm of indignation in Israeli political circles, which demanded that the Prime Minister unequivocally confirm the inadmissibility of creating a Palestinian state. Overall, we observe a dangerous trend when the parties to the conflict prefer to single out individual elements beneficial to them of the agreements, turning a blind eye to their own obligations under the agreement. We call on both parties to approach the implementation of the agreement in good faith and make every effort to avoid a return to war. Special responsibility for implementing the peace initiative lies with the United States and the countries which unequivocally supported the American resolution. Despite all of its shortcomings, we did not block the passage of the document at the request of our Palestinian and Arab friends in order to give Washington an opportunity to try achieve progress in resolving the long-standing Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And the key to this is in an impartial approach where the interests and concerns of both sides are equally taken into account, regardless of alliances and criticism from radical forces. It is extremely important that the peace plan approved by the Council on November 17th brings us back to the path of a two-state solution, which received the approval of a majority UN member states during the 2 rounds of high-level conferences in New York. We will closely monitor the implementation of Security Council Resolution 2803 and expect clarifications from the American side on the formation of the Board of Peace and the ISF and its compliance with the accumulated international legal framework on the Middle East, as well as the interests of Palestine and Israel. As a permanent member of the UN Security Council, Russia intends to continue playing a constructive role in achieving lasting peace in the Middle East, the cornerstone of which has always been and remains a formula 2 states for 2 peoples, which is capable of satisfying both Israel's legitimate security concerns and the Palestinian people's just aspirations for their own state. I thank you.